Hi, I'm Joe Klink, co-leader of the Aviation Club. Today I have with me Dr. Jay Floatman, who's joining us via the internet from Panama City, Florida. He will be speaking to our club on Thursday, March 28th. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here with you all.
Jay, you are both a doctor and a fighter pilot. That's a rather unique combination of careers. How did that come about?
Well, how am I going to pay for medical school, right? That's the biggest question that
Very big question.
Yeah. And so, I knew some people that were former military, and I said, well, I ought to look into the military scholarship programs. And sure enough, there's a scholarship program out there called HPSP, Health Professions Scholarship Program. And I got in for a 3-year scholarship for my last 3 years of medical school, and the Air Force was the way that I, went in. So we go off to training in San Antonio, down at Brooks. It was still Brooks Air Force Base at that time. And we got one incentive flight. So I remember I didn't even have a flight suit. So I wore my camouflage, they were called BDUs at that time. So I jumped into a T-37, which was a side-by-side Air Force trainer that they used for years. It was a 1950s technology. Jumped into this airplane with this old crusty lieutenant colonel. I remember him, looking back on it, I know he was like, oh boy, here I go again. But when I got in that airplane, Joe, I had such a good time. It was literally, you guys know it because you fly. I didn't know it. I wasn't exposed to it. So we go up there and we do all kinds of crazy stuff. And I was like, this is the most fun I've ever had. I can't believe you guys get paid to do this. I was like, are you kidding me?
Opened a whole new world for you.
It really did. It kind of opened my eyes. Number one, hey, these Air Force guys have some cool toys to play with. Number two, I get to go up there and get in the greatest roller coaster, right, in the world. And it's these guys' job, and now as a flight surgeon, I'm supposed to fly with them. I'm not at the controls, but I'm supposed to fly with them. And at that point, I started to wonder if there are any flight surgeons that actually fly the airplane. And so to answer your question, I started to do some investigation. My first assignment as a flight surgeon was down in Tampa at MacDill. Familiar with MacDill down there?
Yes, as a matter of fact, our aviation club took a field trip there last year and went to the Airfest show. It was great.
Well, while I was there, I just started doing research, and the Air Force has this small, and I mean small program. It's called the Pilot Physician Program. I was at MacDill for 1 year, and then I had the fortune to apply to a job. You guys may have heard of it, with the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds. And that's where I got hired to be a flight surgeon. And I went to Nellis Air Force Base, and I got really exposed to the fighter pilot culture and a lot of the different missions. Well, I went to pilot training, and I became a full-fledged pilot.
Wonderful.
So got my wings, and I competed, and I got an F-15C. And that's how my fighter pilot career began. And I was able to merge both disciplines over the course of my career.
You're going to be speaking to the Aviation Club about some of the physiological factors that affect human performance in aviation. Can you just tell us what some of those factors are?
Sure, absolutely. So here's what's interesting is that so many people, they do a lot of research. We've got these unbelievably technologically advanced airframes, right? The fighter aircraft have just become more technologically advanced, and quite honestly, they've outpaced the human. And in the Air Force specifically, and I would venture to say across the DoD, the research and human performance capability, a lot of those professionals essentially were lost. Brooks Air Force Base was a repository for that type of investigation, research, and so on and so forth. But over the years, that repository has just shrunk. So we have really outpaced the human, and it was my opportunity to, I guess, contribute to programs like the F-22, the F-15, the T-6, the F-18, so across DoD platforms, because those platforms started to have physiologic incidents, just like you said. So we had to figure out a way to speak pilot but at the same time try to interpret what was going on with the human. Does that make sense?
Yes, and even in general aviation, we sometimes experience those same problems, not just with military planes.
Absolutely.
So
you just kind of hit the most common threat to the general aviation pilot is lack of oxygen, and we'll talk all about that at our meeting. I'm really looking forward to that.
Good.
But I want to introduce just one other factor that most people don't think about, and that's things like task saturation. You've probably heard
too much overload.
Too much overload, channelization, misprioritization, all of these things that affect the way that we process. Here's what we're going to talk about when I come out there is those things that affect our processor can actually influence the way we feel. So those physiologic responses to those processing interruptions, if you will, actually make us feel a particular way, and we can attribute that to maybe I'm hypoxic, when in fact I have more than enough oxygen. So that's kind of the stuff that we're going to talk about.
It really sounds great, Jay. I look forward to hearing. So I'd like to invite all of you to join us at the Aviation Club on Thursday, March 28th in the Social Center at 1:15. Look forward to hearing what Jay has to tell us, and I hope you'll join us.